Seeds of Wisdom RV and Economics Updates Sunday morning the 9th of November 25. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com blog and become our supporter on Patreon. Good morning. Dinar recaps the Great Development Finance Retreat. Private capital steps in. Dinar investment advice. How falling government aid budgets are accelerating a new financial architecture. Key developments. OECD nations are slashing official development assistance, ODA, by 9% in 2024, with projections of up to 17% declines in 2025. Western governments cite domestic fiscal strain, security costs, and shifting priorities. Emerging economies now turn to non-traditional lenders, including China's Belt and Road channels, Gulf sovereign funds, and private equity consortiums. Analysis: the quiet restructuring of global finance. The withdrawal of traditional Western development finance marks a turning point in the global lending order. For decades, institutions such as the World Bank and OECD donors provided the backbone of infrastructure and poverty reduction programs. As this funding retracts, private finance and bilateral arrangements are rapidly replacing multilateral aid. This reallocation creates an emerging parallel finance ecosystem. Debt for asset swaps, especially involving critical infrastructure. Commodity-backed lending, reviving patterns last seen in pre-dollar global trade. Hybrid finance models where ESG or development outcomes are tied to investor returns. Such changes could gradually dilute the IMF World Bank monopoly over global development capital, one of the 5 pillars underpinning the post-Bretton Woods system. Why it matters. The pivot from public to private funding deepens financial polarization. Wealthy nations internalize resources, while capital-seeking economies look elsewhere, often to BRICS-linked or regional solutions. If sustained, this pattern leads to multipolar capital formation, a precursor to a broader global financial reset. Supply chains as weapons, the new diplomacy of dependence. Why global trade interdependence is becoming the new battleground of peace and power. Key developments. China's shifting demand is reshaping global commodity flows, with soybean and wheat markets seeing price declines as Beijing diversifies suppliers. Gulf states, notably Qatar, navigate a volatile geopolitical environment as energy diplomacy collides with Western sanctions and regional realignments. Supply chain dependence and security are replacing ideology as tools of diplomacy. In the post-COVID, post-Ukraine landscape, economic interdependence is weaponized. Beijing's strategic commodity management, Washington's sanctions diplomacy, and Gulf states' balancing acts all point to a world where diplomacy is executed through supply contracts rather than summits. The structural impact. Regional blocs, ASEAN+, BRICS+, GCC, consolidate to preserve trade autonomy. Countries seek dual-track supply chains, one for the US-EU sphere, another for BRICS, Eurasia. Trade data increasingly mirrors security alliances, not comparative advantage. This transformation signals the erosion of the globalized, single market model, one of the central assumptions of the old world financial order. Why it matters. As economic blocs decouple, capital flows, logistics, insurance, and currency settlements are all impacted. A new diplomacy based on resource control and production security replaces the free trade consensus. This creates the foundation for regionalized finance and independent settlement systems, a building block in the architecture of the coming financial reset. Key developments. Japan's new Prime Minister Taro Takaichi unveils a national industrial investment plan focused on semiconductors, AI, and green manufacturing. Improved US-China trade sentiment removes friction for triangular trade opportunities across Asia-Pacific. Regional private equity funds and sovereign wealth investors are accelerating investment in Japanese and ASEAN assets. Analysis: the next capital center of gravity. The U.S. market's dominance in global equities and finance may face its first major structural challenger in decades. Japan's stable governance, combined with access to both Western and Chinese markets, offers investors a bridge economy during geopolitical fragmentation. Key dynamics to watch. Yen-denominated capital instruments attract renewed interest as hedges against dollar volatility. Asian venture capital and sovereign funds rise as alternative liquidity hubs. Western funds seek co-investment partnerships to maintain exposure without political entanglement. If sustained, these flows could mark the decentralization of capital pricing power, another pillar of the global reset taking shape through markets rather than policy statements. Why it matters. Capital no longer moves solely through New York or London. As Tokyo and Singapore become new liquidity engines, the valuation logic of the global economy shifts. This multipolar market ecosystem decentralizes both price discovery and financial influence, key precursors to a post-dollar capital order. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com blog and become our supporter on Patreon. Source: dinarrecaps.com